Hey everyone, today I want to do a usability comparison between a couple of thermal cameras. There are plenty of reviews that focus on the specs or other aspects of them, but I will actually try to use them in real world and see how both of these cameras stack up. First I'll be using Seek camera. This is just backyard. You can see it's kind of stuttering. That's when it's recalibrating, so it's very sluggish. Here I'm adjusting the focus. Now you can see it's a bit more clear. And then the same footage with the Flir camera. It seems to be much more responsive. At least it's not stuttering for recalibrating, but the image is a bit more blurry because it has lower resolution. I got lucky here. The neighbor's cat came by, so I'm recording it with my camera. This is about probably 10 meters distance to the cat, so you can see the outline, and you can sort of make out, the tail, sort of the features more or less with a Seek camera. Flir camera is once again a bit more blurry, so you can't really tell what kind of animal it is, but it still has decent enough thermal resolution. Next, I'll record inside the house, so you can see how either of these cameras can be used for indoor inspections, for example. And once again, Seek camera is recalibrating constantly, so it's pausing, stopping, and restarting. So it's very difficult to use. Even when adjusting the focus, it takes maybe 30 seconds to adjust it just because of the stuttering and the pausing. If you can also see the focal length is pretty long, so you have to have a lot of room to actually record it. Flir is a wider angle camera, so it's much better suited for indoor inspections. You can see a larger area at once, and you get a decent idea of where possibly the leaks are, where the hot air is escaping, or where the cold air is leaking through. Next, I want to show how this camera would look if you're using it for maybe identifying faulty components on a PCB board or on a PCB circuit, some kind of device. And with Seek camera, its resolution, while it's good, it's sort of difficult to identify smaller components. They kind of blend together. Flir, because of its visual overlay, it's a bit easier to identify individual components, so you can resolve them better. But because its recording quality is so poor, it's also difficult to pinpoint exactly, especially if you're using a really small resistor, for example. Next, I want to compare the accuracy of both cameras. I set the soldering iron to 300 degrees. And you can see Flir has a bit closer temperature reading. Now for the pros and cons of the Seek thermal camera. On the plus side, it has really good spatial resolution, which means you can resolve objects that are close together or closer together. It also has better thermal resolution, which means it can resolve objects that are closer to each other in temperature. So if one element is only maybe half a degree off the other element, you can tell that they are two distinct temperatures. It has a really good startup time, so once you plug it in, within maybe a second or two, you can start recording, you can start examining whatever you need. And because it doesn't have separate batteries, it uses your phone's battery, so there is no charging required, and you can use it for as long as your phone can hold the charge. And it also has a pretty long range. It's longer than Flir because it uses different lens system, so you can detect objects that are farther away and possibly use it for some outdoor activities. The other neat feature is it opens the app automatically. So as soon as you plug in the device into your phone, it will show you a prompt saying, do you want to open the app? And if the app is not installed, it'll prompt you to download and install the app, which comes in handy sometimes. The other advantage is that you can adjust focus manually, so you can pinpoint whichever object you're trying to measure and focus in on that object specifically, so that it's not trying to record everything or trying to guess what are you trying to record. As for the downsides of this camera, is it's not usable for indoor inspections because of the longer focal length, so you can only record a smaller portion of whatever room or building that you're recording, so you have to have a long distance between you and the room or the walls to actually get a good sense of what's going on. The other downside is because it's a fixed attachment or a fixed port camera, you cannot use it with most phone cases. Maybe if the phone case is very thin, it can accommodate the camera, but otherwise you have to remove the phone case in order to be able to plug it in. Also, it doesn't have autofocus, so you have to focus manually every time, otherwise your image is going to be blurry. And lastly, the camera is always recalibrating, so it doesn't allow you to record continuously. It's kind of stuttering, as you saw from the video, so you always need to be vigilant of what it's doing, otherwise you might miss something, especially if you're trying to have a continuous recording of a subject. Also, because of this constant stuttering and recalibrating, it's difficult to focus it, because as you're adjusting the focus, the camera would stop for a couple of seconds and then continue, so you might overshoot the subject when you're focusing during that recalibrating time. Now, while Flir has lower resolution, it more than makes up for it with its MSX technology, which basically means it overlays the actual camera image with a thermal image. So you see outlines, and in some cases you can read labels of whatever you're trying to record. It doesn't work in low light or in darker conditions because the image just isn't usable, so you have to rely only on thermal properties of the camera, which are not great. But because of its shorter focal length, you can use it for indoor inspections. You can see a larger portion of a room at once. And thanks to its extendable adapter or a plug for the phone, you can use it with almost any phone case. Now for the downsides. This camera takes a very long time to start up, anywhere between 20 and 30 seconds sometimes. It has separate battery charging, which means you need to charge up the camera before you can actually use it. And it's advertised as 60 minutes of continuous runtime on a single charge. In reality, it's closer to 45 minutes at normal temperature, and about 25 to 30 minutes if it's cold outside and you're trying to do some kind of outside inspection. It has a pretty low spatial and thermal resolution, so it sometimes blends two objects together if they're close physically, or if their temperatures are fairly close, you wouldn't be able to tell that they're actually different objects. For most cases, it's not an issue, but if you're trying to determine, let's say, if you have some PCB work, then components might be off by just a couple of degrees, and you wouldn't be able to tell it with this camera. It also has very poor recording quality, so the app actually compresses the video so much that even though camera outputs a decent enough resolution, you can't use it afterwards for any sort of a report or somewhere where you need to show proof of whatever you're recording, unless it's just kind of a very rough outline that you require. And because of this very high compression and low resolution, this camera is not suitable for outdoor work. Most objects that are a little farther away, they'll be blurry and indistinguishable from each other. Finally, the app is very limited. In fact, it's barely usable after the latest update. Before this update, the camera app had more features and you were able to adjust certain things that you cannot adjust anymore. One of these things, as I just mentioned, was the resolution of the recording video, or more specifically, compression ratio. The camera app compresses the video so much that it creates lots of artifacts and noise that you cannot fix because that's the only recording you get. And I've actually called Flir tech support, and one of their support agents mentioned that they've done this on purpose, basically to push customers to buy more expensive products. The agent phrased it something along the lines of, we want our customers to use the best camera for its application, which sort of implies that we don't want people buying a cheaper camera and being able to use it for multiple things if we can sell them on a more expensive one. And he actually told me that if I want to use this camera in any capacity for PCB work, then I need to buy this other camera, which costs almost $4,000. So in summary, both of these cameras have some useful features and they might be usable in certain specific cases, but it seems like either just inherent technology in the camera or because the company wants to cripple it, both of these cameras are very poor in their applications, and I think the prices are way too inflated for them to be justifiable purchases.